the importance of state and society as acknowledging the sovereignty of Allah Almighty. It is one among 5 surahs that are called the glorifiers because the beginning of the surah, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Allah Almighty is the sovereign. Everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to Allah. Allah is the king, the sovereign, and the power. If you want to have some kind of layman's understanding of the vastness of Allah's creation, perhaps I could illustrate by this example of the astrophysicists who said that if the human hand or the fist of a human being holds sand, it will average about 400,000 grains of sand. And if all the sands of all the beaches, of all the deserts of the entire world were to be added together, they will not come up anywhere near the size of the galaxies and the universe that Allah Almighty has created. This is Allah. يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. Allah is the outward and the inward. This creation is a manifestation of Allah, and the inwardness is that within us, Allah Almighty is closer than our jugular vein. Allah Almighty knows what goes into the earth and what comes out of it. Allah has knowledge of the movement of the fish in the deepest oceans and the darkness of the night. Allah has knowledge of your shadow. Allah has knowledge of each and everything. Nothing escapes Allah. When we once said the business of the akhirah is our conduct in the dunya, and the business of our conduct in the dunya is the quality of our eternal life in the akhirah. From this conclusion, there is no escape. So when we talk about sovereignty, Allah Almighty talks about the importance of the individual, that is the state, and society. And I would like to just spend the next few minutes at the molecular level of the importance of the state. Haqqul Hurriyat, the sanctity of responsible government. This is when the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary submit themselves to the sovereignty of Allah, not to man-made laws, but to the sovereignty of Allah Almighty. But in order to ensure that these 3 institutions of government are properly represented, one of the objectives of the Sharia is Haqqul Karama, that is the sanctity of human dignity. And this human dignity is an acknowledgement of Allah Almighty having created insan. لَقَدْ خَلَقَنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah has created him in the best of modes. لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. And the noblest of you in the sight of Allah is he who is best in conduct. So in this connection, there are 2 pillars that make up the Islamic community. One is the individual, and the other is the society. But how do we develop these individuals? The young people, both boys and girls, I would like to remind you that it starts off with 2 pillars, dhikr and khizmat, or service. Dhikr is the beginning of the person to realize as a human being the purpose of life. We are all in a stage of nafsul ammara, and that is the animal self. But the moment he remembers, he's in a state of dhikr, he asks himself questions. As I said to somebody, the most important 2 days in the life of a human being is one, his birthday, and the other is the day when he realizes why he was born. Lucky are those who realize this early. Miserable is he who realizes it too late when he reaches the edge of the grave. So dhikr is the beginning. It is a remembrance from whence you came and whence you're returning. From that zikr emerges individual perfection. Because that person in the nafsul ammara now begins to question his purpose. And when he questions himself, an evolutionary process begins in that he's becoming the questioning self. Do I really need to eat the second plate? Do I really need this item? Do I really need to expend X amount of money in a certain activity? And when he becomes censorious, nafsul lawwama, the questioning self, answers start pouring in. And when the answers start pouring, such an individual evolves to the third level, and that is nafsul lawwama, that is the inspired self. Because the answers are pouring down as it comes along. The more he questions, the more he reflects, the more he ponders. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Allah reminds us in no less than 700 verses of the 6,236 verses about reflection, about questioning. So what happens is from nafsul lawwama, from the inspired self, he becomes a person of nafsul mutama'inna, and that is a person that is now the tranquil self. In this tranquility that he has, Allah Almighty says, Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutama'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya, fadkhuli fi ibadi, wadkhuli jannati. Calling upon the one who is in state of tranquility, state of contentment. And when you are contented, Allah is pleased with you. Nafsul radiyah. And when Allah is pleased with you, creation is pleased with you. Nafsul mardiyah. Now this is what it means, individual perfection. That person who is in this state constantly understands the meaning of service. He adopts the one path, the path of selflessness, and not the path of selfishness. Again, it's an objective of the Sharia. Haqqul mal, sanctity of private property. Allah Almighty gives us and grants us the spirit of acquisitiveness. We are genetically programmed to acquire. But if we do not have a built-in regulatory mechanism to regulate the spirit of acquisitiveness, then acquisitiveness evolves from need fulfillment to greed. There is nothing in this world. Every person, of course, is in need. There is enough in this world for everyone's need, but there's never enough for everyone's greed. So this is the evolution, the stage of life of the person that starts from dhikr. And this surah is reminding us of the importance of the state and society. Individual perfection leads to societal perfection because every person that he starts contributing themselves adopt, helping each other. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, doing good deeds. In this way, the societal perfection leads to congregational perfection. Congregational perfection leads to a society that is perfect. Only then comes a united ummah. Until then, there is no ummah. let's be factual about it. It has to begin from the individual, and that individual must be selfless. What is this selflessness? As Maulana Bam had given a verse of the Quran and also gave an example, I would like to give an example similar to this verse. It was a Christian who came to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, and he sat among the circles. And after his talk, it was time for Maghrib, and he said, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam said to this person, or to the Sahabas, who would take care of him? And the one sprang up, but he was the poorest amongst them. But because he was the first to raise his hand, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam appointed him to take care of that person's hospitality. That night, when he brought him home and he told his wife that I have a guest, she didn't complain, but she took him aside and she said, we have only this much food. If you can remove or distance the candle, we will put all that we have on that plate. So when he eats, he doesn't feel embarrassed, and he wouldn't know that we would go without food. That night, when he did that, Allah Almighty sent this verse, "Utu wa yu'thiruna ala anfusihim, walau kana bihim khasasa." These indeed are the righteous people who prefer others to themselves. This is what you call individual perfection. And because every Sahaba was in a similar way, we can conclude that that congregation was also perfect. And in this concentric circles, everyone, every Jamaat, every congregation, in a polycentric way, were perfect. So you get this movement when Islam was spreading. In the time of Musa alayhi salam, his followers didn't do this. They didn't pay attention seriously to the Torah or the Ten Commandments. So the message of Musa alayhi salam stayed put within an area of 100 square kilometers. But the message of the Sahabas, after the demise of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, spread to 1.4 million square kilometers in the same period of 40 years. Because there was a societal perfection. And in this way, we have to analyze today the state of the Muslim Ummah, as we call it in inverted commas, and it is totally fragmented. Of the 57 countries of the world of Islam, all of them are affected or inflicted by either turbulence, tension, turmoil, or transition. Not a single one of them is without these problems. And each and every one of them are far removed from the character and the example of conduct that was expected and the legacy of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. If you take the European Union, they comprise of barely 26 nations, making up 500, a population of 500, with 100% literacy rate, and the third largest economy in the world after China. The state of the Islamic world is far removed from the Ummah and far removed from the examples that Allah Almighty has commanded in Surah Hadid. If you look at وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This verse 10 of Surah Hadid, Allah Almighty is saying, what is the matter with you that you do not want to give when you know that Allah is the inheritor of everything that is in the heavens and the earth? And Allah Almighty points out of those who made contribution before the victory was acquired, that is of Makkah itself. And it is the verse that many scholars say related to the example of Hazrat Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, about his famous incident when Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has said, who is amongst you that will make this contribution? And he placed his entire wealth before Nabi Muhammad ﷺ. Angel Jibreel had come to Nabi Muhammad ﷺ and said, Allah has sent his salams and he's inquiring about the state of Hazrat Abu Bakr. What is the matter? He said he had given all his wealth for the sake of Islam, for the sake of the Ummah. Ask him, inquire from him. Did he do this for the pleasure of Allah? Or is he doing, and he's averse and sorry about it? And when Nabi Muhammad ﷺ said to Hazrat Abu Bakr, who was sitting next to him, that this is Angel Jibreel, and this he brings salams to you from Allah Almighty, and this is what he inquires. Hazrat Abu Bakr broke into tears. He wept. And he said, how could I ever imagine that my state of poverty would be one of discomfort for me? It was for pleasure of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah. And then the next verse Allah brings it, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ وَلَهُ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. Who amongst you will give a goodly loan to Allah Almighty that I may reward him manifold, both here and in the Akhirah? Again, to demonstrate how the act of giving is institutionalized through zakat, sadaqah, lillah and fitra. Qardan hasana. Now I want to illustrate again a story of Hazrat Uthman. Hazrat Uthman was, as you know, a well-known businessman, and he was in the trade of livestock. It was a time of drought. And that time, when other traders went to the supplier said that the last stock that he had sold it to Hazrat Uthman. So they said, what are we going to do now? How are we going to manage? Because we don't have any stock. So the man said, go to him. Maybe he might sell it to you at a profit. So the traders went and they said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, we know you're a businessman. We know you're in for profit. But sell the stock to us. We will give you 100% profit. And Hazrat Uthman said no. They decided to caucus among themselves, and they went back to him, and this is a very simple narrative, and they said to him, we will offer you 200%. He said no. This time they got a little bit peeved about this, so they went and caucused under the tree, and they said, now we don't understand, this is supposed to be Amir al-Mu'mineen. They said, let us go and offer him an offer he cannot refuse. So they went back to him and they said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, we offer you an offer you cannot refuse. We'll offer you 300% profit. So Hazrat Uthman turned to them and said, no amount of profit you give me will match the profit that I have already earned. I have sold my stock to Allah Almighty. It is now yours for free. This is the kind of businessman that Islam produced. He was still a businessman. He still looked for his margins. But that's the quality. No system, political, social, economic system in the world is capable of producing what Islam has produced. And this is why it is important for young people to try to understand the maqasid of the Sharia. What you do in the mosque is Allah's business. What you do outside is also Allah's business. Everything we do is Allah's business. There is no such thing as dividing the dunya and the akhirah and living Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personalities. What we do in the mosque is Allah's business, and what we do outside is our business. That is shirk. And this is why I say that it is the greatest single challenge for Muslims. In the last 100 years, the fragmentation, division, and discord is because of the absence of understanding the root of where this starts. Dhikr leads to fikr, and fikr leads to shukr. It's not the other way around. How did the Sahabas conduct themselves? You amongst you may be graduates of business administration and management. The first quality was independence. Independence in that the individual's perfection was to submit to Allah Almighty alone. So he wouldn't be a person that will determine his decisions to please his friend. I'm appointing him in my society, he's my friend. That was not the basis. So when a person exercises independence, what grows out of that is responsibility. He took the decision, he is responsible for that decision. And from responsibility emerges the third quality, which is accountability. Accountability, because he accepted responsibility. That accountability could be to his wife, his family, his business, the chairman of the board, his shareholders, stakeholders, members of the public or society. But once you accept the quality of accountability, what emerges from that is transparency. No secret meetings, no political manipulations, corruption, transparent. And from transparency, he who is transparent automatically is fair. His books are clean and open. And from fairness comes ultimately the highest value, which is justness. Let's work it the other way around. You cannot be just if you're not fair. You cannot be fair if you're not transparent. You cannot be transparent if you're not accountable. You cannot be accountable if you're not responsible. And you cannot be responsible if you're not independent. Try it. Use your intellect as some kind of scissors and see if you can put it the other way around. It's impossible. This was the character of the Sahabas, and they were transformational leaders, not just transactional leaders. A transactional leader is a person who has knowledge of administration, and that's valuable and much needed in society. He's your CEO, he's a COO, and he does the executive's work, that of the strategic planners. But a transformational leader recognizes the leadership in others, and he extricates leadership from young people. And that is what is needed in our community. 50 years ago, I addressed the Muslim youth movement in South Africa. And I want to mention this because your chairman mentioned about the importance of the Islamic Circle of Southern Africa or South Africa. We were in the height of the apartheid days. I was in Salisbury Island, an apartheid institution. And I would greet my fellow students. I would say, Assalamu alaikum. And they would say to me, good morning, good afternoon. Shy about Islam. We decided to set up a Salah, a Jamaat Khana there, and we did the first Jummah in the university campus ever in South Africa. From there emerged the Muslim youth movement. Somebody said to me in an audience like this, I remember in Pine Street, sometime in April 1970, and he raised his hand and he said to me, what is the name? He said, YMMA, Young Men's Muslim Association. I said, no. We don't want these institutional structures. We, the Muslim youth, know where we are, know where we want to go, and we will move. Muslim Youth Movement. And that's how all the audience got up and we formed the movement. And we formed cells and groups all over the country because our job was to help. Brothers and sisters, there is no limit to what a human being can achieve if he does not care who gets the credit. That is your state of ihsan. That underpins Iman. Iman underpins Islam. Stop being the walking dead. Nabi Muhammad ﷺ had said, there'll come a time when my religion will be like a piece of hot coal in the palm of your hand, and you will not be able to hold it. The Sahaba said, "Oh, Ya Nabi, does this mean we will be fewer in number?" He said, "No, you will be larger in number, larger than ever before, but you will be like foam, as powerless as foam on the ocean waves." Isn't that the position today? 1.8 billion Muslims, powerless to do the gross injustices that are perpetrating. Can you not see? Allah has given you the resources. In Surah Hadid, He mentions, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا, mention about وَأَنزَلْنَا, about hadith about the iron, the use of the iron, and the benefits for you in this world and the akhirah. 60% of the world's natural resources are held by 25% of the world's population. That is the Muslim. But they constitute 80% of the poor and the deprived and the oppressed. I say to you, my brothers, the two enemies of mankind are poverty and wealth. Why? Because poverty is associated with ignorance and wealth is associated with arrogance. The business of Islam is to remove the ignorance of poverty with knowledge and the arrogance of wealth with gratitude. We seem to have plenty of both. Poverty, ignorance, and arrogance. This is why I say that when you study the stages in life, we are in the autumn of our lives. You young people have a challenge. Maybe we learn from you and you learn from us. But one of the things I admire about the Islamic circle is that unlike us, we formed in 1975 the Islamic Council of South Africa. Because for us, the fear and the concern at that time was this institutionalized ethnic orientation of the law, classifying the South African population into whites, blacks, coloreds, and Indians. And this process was leading to de-Muslimization, in that Muslims were falling into the colored camp and other Muslims were falling in the Indian camp. And this process of de-Muslimization, we feared, would result and lead to de-Islamization. Hence, there was a need for us to assert the common presence of an Islamic council to express to the powers that be of that time the importance of us not accepting this orientation, but looking upon Muslims regardless of color and creed. But one mistake, or oversight, or perhaps naiveness, that our Muslims themselves were not mature enough to accept this chain of command. And because of that, and having the absence of transformational knowledge, the organizations were in constant conflict with each other. I don't want to be there because I don't like him. He doesn't want to be there because he's of this madhab and that madhab, and it went on. The leaders in a fragmented society compete with each other and contribute to further fragmentation. But in a polycentric center, which is different, a circle, concentric circles, leaders help each other. Like cosmology, the planets move in a predetermined orbit, and they cooperate with each other. They don't suddenly swing in the opposite direction. So my suggestion is, brothers, form yourselves circles. Convert the movement to a resource mobilization movement. If you are in school and education, share your knowledge and experience with other organizations. If you are busy with humanitarian work and upliftment of the poor and the needy, share with them in concentric circles. Know that the common goal is the society, the perfection of society. Only then, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. Then you become the best of communities. And the idea of a polycentric movement has its own built-in momentum, like the Sahabas. And this is how Islam spread. So we come back to the last phrase I would like to conclude, is that, brothers and sisters, when you connect, you collaborate. When you collaborate, you comprehend. And when you comprehend, you contribute. That is how the society, from a level of imitation, transforms itself into a society of innovation. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah Almighty does not change the condition of a people unless and until they change what is within themselves. I thank the brothers again for this opportunity, at least for inviting me as well, and yourselves, and we hope that this conference lead to greater polycentric movements in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, in Durban, in all the towns and cities. Our time has come. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. Thank you.